Alright guys, so we're back. Another week.
Welcome to the, I guess,
Real talk.
yeah, but in fall. So I guess it's fall's in full swing now.
That's
It's getting
right.
a bit chilly, rainy, lots of rain. Hope everyone's keeping safe, no floods, and not being blown away by any wind.
That's crazy. We talk about floods. It's not just here we are. Just like flooding like everywhere. It's kind of wild. States.
Yeah, there was that hurricane in Florida.
It's wild. I'm like this whole flooding thing is like it's like transcontinental now, man.
Yeah, the outlook on weather is changing every year for the worse. The cold is getting colder, hot is getting hotter. So I wouldn't doubt if we're like 40-degree summers in the next few years consistent.
That's not too bad. I don't mind the highs. Highs is just we're going to like climate change. Yes, I think the flooding and of course the severe like rain and snowstorms that can be pretty tricky, right? Luckily, we're blessed to be living in an area that we don't experience tornadoes, and I do feel for those who do live in the valleys and places in the States where there's always tornadoes and hurricanes. Like, it's scary, right? And just watching homes get demolished. And you see clips on YouTube where you seriously see this thing just rip through a house and it only takes seconds and then bang.
Yeah.
You know, people's
Or like the
livelihood.
water is just, it's the 1 second one thing's there and next second it's gone.
Yeah, like tsunami Japan, holy,
Oh
watch
yeah,
it.
that's
It's
crazy,
yeah.
that's scary.
Yeah. It's like, it's like weathering through life.
Yeah, fair enough. So, I guess one of the topics that I was thinking about this week or the last few days was, I don't know if I can blanket phrase it, but people pleasing. If you have friends, family, people you're close with, it can definitely be harder to bring up issues you have with them because you have that rapport and you don't want to, make a big deal or make it a conflict, which might, cause that relationship to be in murky waters, for the lack of a better word. Staying on the themes of storms and stuff like that. So what are your guys' thoughts on, or if you had an experience where either you did bring up something and it went well or bad, or you didn't bring up something because you didn't want to make a conflict and maybe it still bothers you, or you just pushed it aside, or how do you guys deal with that?
For me, it's a very weird thing to explore because I'm surrounded by people that are very open about how they feel. So I generally feel very little need to bring anything up because I know someone else will. And then Parsons pointing to himself, and he's one of those people for sure. And my mom, I got other friends and people I work with. I have no doubt if someone's upset, it's gonna turn into a thing. And I mean, I'm not afraid of sort of diving into it, they'll be just yelling at each other, and I'll just be like, yeah, there's no point in me adding anything because you're both gonna see me as an enemy the moment I say something, so I'm just gonna
Even if it bothers you, you would, correct me if I'm wrong, but you would kind of just let it pass by if it bothers you, or
I guess it's I think I in a way I'm like everybody else. We see these things happening, or we kind of know. We have a friend and we know that they're kind of wrestling with something, and part of you wants to sort of just put it on the table, and there's another part of you that knows that if you're too on the nose about it, they're just gonna close themselves off. And I don't know, that's sort of as far as I've really thought about it so far, I guess. I mean, you know, look, it's one of those things where you never really know where you're, like, when you dig into it, where it goes. I'm sure you guys sound like a lost.
It's kind of a conundrum, right? Because the people pleasing obviously comes from, I mean, you can't argue against that. It's for the benefit of someone else. Right? People pleasing is a very selfless act, but it comes.
Depends. I mean, it can be selfish.
Yeah, right. That too. Right? If you depending on your motive, I think, Mac, you're right about, you know, the motive behind it, right? But you know, personally, people pleasing, it's tough because on one hand, you want the people around you to, you know, to be blessed by your existence, whether you serve them with your time, your talents, your treasures, whatever, right? And then when it becomes a cycle, then it's like, okay, then does that become expected of you? Have you then put yourself on this pedestal where, oh wow, if I assume that, you know, this person who has been doing this my whole life will continue to do that, then that person will always be there, right? What if suddenly, let's say example, like my case in point, like myself, is that, okay, well, I'm gonna stop, you know, being available to you because there's suddenly things in my life that now have become a priority, right? Does that mean that I am treating you any different, or am I like looking less at you, or am I, you know, don't have your best interest in mind? I think I'm maybe off tangent a little bit right now, but just thinking about people pleasing, it's very, like Jay said, it's very broad at the same time. It's very kind of a thing where it happens to everybody, and it's very normal. It's just how you find that balance between like people pleasing and protecting yourself, right? And when you come to that junction, you know, can you, you know, protect yourself without, quote unquote, losing friends or losing family? Because in the end, if they like, oh wow, what if, in the end they go, oh, you're actually very different. I don't like how you are because you're not available to me all the time. Well, sometimes you just can't because you grow up, you know, you have other responsibilities. Say you become married, you have kids. Well, your kids and your spouse is your more important thing that you should prioritize. But I think people pleasing, it's hard. I noticed that when I've changed and stopped pleasing people that I sort of maybe used to. Not to say that I've lost them, but there's definitely a distance, and then that in itself kind of speaks volumes. Right? If I try any harder to try to get them back, well then what's the point maybe in that? Because maybe perhaps they're not in it for a friendship or a, you know, kind of connection, but rather just for convenient usage. Right?
Yeah, no, I've definitely had that. I've I wouldn't say I lost friends, but I guess become more distant because even though they didn't say it, there's probably a little bit of like, you know, you've been offering this to me, like you said, the whole time we've known each other, but then if you stop that and, you know, you feel a distance, then you kind of see their true colors, right? Because I found I was putting more effort in to relationships than I was receiving back, so I was, you know, leaving myself thin, and when I decided to, you know, only give what I was receiving, I found that I became, you know, more distant with them because I was the one that was basically keeping the relationship together. So, like P said, you can definitely, it's a hard line to walk, because, you know, you want it to be the best relationship you can, but at the same time, things change in your life. Yeah.
It's such a weird thing to, if you bring it up in a sort of, let's just say, you know, Christian circles example, and people pleasing. It's a weird dichotomy that's created because if you look at it just on other principle, or just if you minus the theology and just look at like the text, it's very clear that people pleasing is something you should be doing, if you will, because you're trying to serve others, you're trying to give yourself, you're trying to be selfless, you're trying to show people, a piece of unconditional love that, the Christian has gotten from Jesus, right? But then when you think about it, like, hey, I don't know, because this is, mind you, there's no theological, I have no theological background. It's just something that I'm just sitting through. Sometimes when I, talk to God and kind of figure things out, and there are moments when I do come to a middle point. Goes, well, do you have to do that, right? And it goes back to what Mac was saying. What is your motive? Because maybe it is selfish. You're trying to have an angle. You're just using, say, scripture or your Christian persona to look like you're trying to be genuine, but maybe there's something more sinister underneath, right? Like you have a different agenda. Which is probably where all these scandals and all these bad things kind of come from, right? So what I'm going with this is that I'm just kind of thinking right now that I don't think Jesus really was a people pleaser too, right? Because he knew that he couldn't save everybody. He just had to continue on through, walking through, to his to Calvary, right? And he didn't stop, right? People had to even touch his robes to get healed, but Jesus didn't intentionally try to stop to save everybody because he knew he couldn't at the moment, right? So in that regard, that shifted the way I guess I understand my faith and realize, okay, maybe you don't have to please everybody, right? I can't save everybody. You just can't, right? Because it gets very exhausting. You're very finite people, right? So yeah, people pleasing is it's tough, and at first it's something that I think you gradually learn as you get older, right? When time, money, and your availability is tested, you realize, oh wow, I don't actually have time to please everybody. Yeah, I just don't. As much as you want to, but you just don't. Right.
Yeah. I know I've talked with P about, we have a friend that is, a serial late person, and I'm sure if I brought it up to them, they would, apologize, it'd be all good. But just having that, not wanting to make that conflict with people, because, you want to keep the good times going. I don't know where I was going with that, but you're people pleasing in order to, make the relationship work. But I guess the sacrifices should be on both sides, right? You should, if it's a relationship worth keeping, you should be in the middle, and it shouldn't just be one-sided.
Where do you guys see sort of people pleasing and having some respect, or like self-respect? Right? I feel like there's some kind of area where, people pleasing versus like self-respect, like, oh, I'm not gonna do this because I just, or like Jay was saying, I need to tell like my friends who are constantly late that maybe it's not a good thing because we have a time thing I gotta deal with. I have things that I gotta deal with. Maybe other parties also have other commitments after or before, right? So it's about respecting, each other's time or just availability, right? Do you guys see a kind of a correlation between people pleasing and sort of an attitude of respect, whether it's self-respect or respect in general? Maybe a little abstract.
Yeah. Well, I think, I mean, let me just put this, like, in a way, I think, I've been trying to sort of put my head, or I've been trying to frame how I think about the idea of people pleasing, and I've never really thought, seriously about it, I guess. I've never really kind of sat down and thought about whether that's something I'm kind of doing, I guess. In a way, I like, in a way, I feel like what I've been thinking is that I kind of treat it almost like a yellow or a red flag, because in a way, like, if I feel like, if it gets to the point where I feel like I'm just people pleasing, then I feel like, why am I even doing that, right? Like, or you know, it's not necessarily a bad thing, right? Like, but I mean, like going back to what you were saying about, you know, what would Jesus have done, you know, or like, you know, was he a people pleaser? Like, probably not. Yeah, and I agree. Like, but I think, you know, part of the reason is because, you know, there's a difference between knowing how to love and knowing how to and sort of falling into people pleasing, you know. You know, if you you know, we all love our friends and we love our parents, and you know, we love people around us in one way or another, and like but the moment you sort of idolize someone, you know, that's sort of the moment you don't really think of them as a person anymore, right? Like, you know, you're trying to please them, like in some weird way, and you know, you're trying to win them over for some reason, like, and like I don't know whether that is what people like, you know, if that's sort of the broad way of defining people pleasing, but I feel like, you know, that those are the moments that give me pause, right? Like, I mean, you know, like, you know, when in my normal course of life, like I want to connect with everybody, right? Like, but I don't need them to like me, right? Like, but I think ultimately, you know, that's what, you know, everybody wants to like be connected with everybody else, right? You know, like this, like you can't like nothing compares to just kind of being in a room with somebody who you feel understands you and knows you, right? And you're not thinking about pleasing them, right? And that you're thinking about just being there together and enjoying something together, and just knowing that someone else understands something and understands just how incredible something is in the same way you do. It's just like, you know, it's the best thing ever, right? And like you forget about this idea of pleasing anyone in that moment, because why? Like, you know, you're already like doing the thing that you've always wanted to do together.
Yeah, I think for a lot of people, people pleasing is subconscious. Like, you don't even think about it. It's just, you're just trying to, at least for me, I can only speak for myself, but yeah, you want to achieve the best time possible, right? And for me, I would do almost anything to, you know, keep that going, right? I want to have this relationship where I like them, they like me, and anything that might cause a rift in that, I don't want to do that, even if it's for my own boundaries. So yeah, like I agree with you that we do want to have that connection with other people, but yeah, I guess it's a curse and a blessing that, you know, you're thinking about people pleasing, because in a way you can make the relationships better, like stronger, because, you know, if they're a good friend and you bring something up like, hey, you know, this bothered me when you did this, like, it's not a big deal, but I just want to let you know. And if they are receptive to it, then yeah, it makes the relationship stronger, right? Because then you're never going to have that issue again, and you're going to feel close to them because they are putting the effort in to maintain the relationship and actually listen to you and not get defensive or anything like that, right? But yeah, at the same time, it's, you know, hard to make that conflict, if you will. Yeah.
It's so interesting, like hearing both of you talk about this, because I'm imagining in my head, like it's a very transcendent thing. We go past the people pleasing, you guys, you go back to enjoying the company, enjoying the presence, and just enjoying the person, and just knowing that you love and support, you know, that person no matter what happens, right? And what Mac was saying, and then kind of what Jay was talking about, the one thing I can somehow picture is people pleasing. It starts with like a lens, right? And then somehow, when you start, you know, say pleasing said individual, like example, if I'm like totally love bombing like Mac, And it becomes where, if from like a lens, I'm like, okay, then I think that then transforms into an attitude, like the way you, and then I'm like, oh, then it becomes like you're constantly like Jay was saying, you want to somehow like you continue that connection and that relationship, and it becomes like, oh, then it's not like you do it consciously, but it subconsciously turns into people pleasing because you want to keep the person in your life, and you want to maintain a relationship. So from a lens to an attitude, then it kind of, if like you said, Mac a while ago, if it turns dark or if it gets too maybe not pure, it turns into a lifestyle, right? I think maybe it sounds like that's something that it's now hardwired into us as a being of trying to find that, maybe even validation, right? Because when you please someone, you see them happy. If in a selfish sense, Mac was saying is that, oh, you felt like you've done something. You've helped someone, you've blessed someone, it's like, okay. Even though maybe it's like, giving a child all the sugar that they want.
Mm.
They're happy because, you spoiled, but at the same time, it's like, is it the best choice? Probably not.
Mm.
But, it's kind of that, I think sort of an analogy, right? If I can point it that way. But it's just so interesting, kind of figuring out that, oh, it's something that we develop sort of over time, but we allow it to, right?
Mm-hmm.
To come to this point of, people pleasing, and then if you're not aware of it, then that's probably how also people get so exhausted because they're trying to keep everybody happy. But like I said, the person who's probably going to be the most unhappy is maybe the person who's giving, right? Unless of course they're wired on giving, like they want to keep doing. Then okay, that's the powers all be to you, because somehow if you can find a way to keep that cycle, then that's great. Because I think we do need some people like that in the world who somehow run on some kind of tank that's bottomless for this, who don't burn out from being selfless. Yeah.
It's interesting that you mentioned that because a lot of people I know do get burnt out from being around other people, which is the introverts and extroverts. But the point I'm trying to make is that maybe because a lot of people aren't, back to the theme of being self-aware, that they people please, that might be draining them. And in my opinion, when you're hanging out with people that you enjoy spending time with, it shouldn't feel like you're putting in effort. It just should feel natural, and you should feel drained from being around someone. I don't know if you guys agree with that, but that got me thinking that maybe a lot of people do people please, and that's why they're always so tired and don't want to go out so often, because they have all these relationships that they're trying to manage in different ways to please certain people, and when they are spread out so thin, because they have 10 people, 20 people that they're trying to people please, it can definitely wear down on you. So yeah, that just got me thinking, maybe that's why I don't feel burnt out when I hang out with people, because I'm very selective in who I hang out with. And even though I would like to say I don't people please, I do, but I think because I'm aware that that is a thing, I'm consciously trying not to do that, which leads to me not being burnt out with the people I hang out with. That's just what was going on in my head.
That sounds healthy.
Yeah. Yeah, that was just a revelation I had in my own head right now. So.
It's interesting because you pick the quality of people rather than the quantity of people, right? And people who see you for who you are, and regardless of whatever it is, they'll still love and support you as a friend, as a brother, and I don't think you can ask for more, man, in that way, because it's almost like you can sort of show love unconditionally and also with no agenda, right? And like you said, I think hanging out with people shouldn't be like a chore. If it's gonna be a chore, that's already a sign that this is gonna could go really bad if you don't shift the focus, or if you don't shift your own personal mindset, or if the situation doesn't play out better, then it can be it can end up in a bad way. But yeah, when you hang with people, you shouldn't be a chore, because if it is, then perhaps maybe you are burnt, or when you shouldn't be hanging out with them. I don't know, but to your point earlier, yeah, I don't think hanging out with people should be like a chore, right? Unless you're like a really close hermit, like introvert, where you just won't talk to anybody.
Yeah, not to say that like there aren't people that do get burnt out from like a social battery, right? And I'm sure everyone has different varying levels of social batteries, but in regards to spreading yourself too thin with trying to people please, I guess that's the main point. Yeah.
Well, this isn't really related to what we're talking to you. Not entirely, I guess, but
No worries.
I'm just like wondering how, because I've got my iPad and my MacBook there, and I'm almost sure like YouTube or something is listening to our conversation. I'm just wondering how it's gonna affect my
Algorithm.
yeah, exactly.
People
what's gonna
pleasing.
show up on my playlist later?
Yeah, self-healing, boundaries.
Yeah, there's just so many like situations like I'm having a conversation like with you guys or like with other people, and I suddenly noticing that it's recommending these things. I'm like, wow, I'm not even scared anymore. It's just weird.
So what has popped up?
Let's see. No, a lot of like Marvel stuff, and I don't even look for it; it just shows up, and a lot of let's see, finance things, video game stuff. I mean, like, and like these are stuff. A lot of it is. I don't like. There were some very specific things that showed up, and I remember distinctly. I just don't remember exactly what it was. I think we were like talking about furniture or something, and that showed up, and like and I mean not even ads. Like these are YouTube videos.
Oh wow.
Yeah, but then Google owns YouTube, so.
True. I think I sent P some like self-help videos on Instagram, and just because it popped up, and now getting like a whole bunch of them pop up just because I saw one video, and I clicked it to send it to him, and then now I'm getting so many of them.
So the moral of the story, you gotta start saying each other Star Wars stuff, and then watch all the memes and all the videos just blow up.
But I'm already getting that.
It knows about you even.
Yeah.
It's getting on a deeper level of learning.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because I mean, like, I think we already talked about it, so yeah. I don't know.
It's scary. Did you guys watch the Tesla conference thing that he had?
Yeah.
The robots.
Yeah, the robots, man. Dude,
That
we're
was
like
wild.
we're close to Terminator, man. Yeah. It's wild. I didn't watch the whole thing extensively. I just saw a clip of this dude just talking to the robot.
I'm half wondering how much of that was staged.
Yeah, right.
Because I think nobody ever actually said those were AI bots. Like there are people who are just wondering, like if they were
Program.
puppets. Like yeah.
Mm.
Like so, pouring the drinks probably was AI, but like the conversation they felt it was too. Most people felt, and yeah, like it was too natural, and I guess and yeah, nobody actually ever said it was AI.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't doubt that in what years? Maybe like 5 years that there is going to be a not high level, but like a decent amount of AI interface for whether it be restaurants, customer service positions. Because in Japan they already have like hotels that are fully run by AI, like at least the front desk. I think there's one with like a dinosaur theme. And there's like a velociraptor that greets you.
Oh, that's so cool.
And you just check in through the velociraptor.
Nice. Oh, weird.
Yeah.
And
so
they understand English? Is that?
I'm not sure how in depth, but like you can get checked in and everything just by talking to the AI. So
Getting checked in a hotel by a dinosaur.
Yeah.
That's a gimmick you can work with.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, I guess Japan is much more technologically advanced than we are.
I think the world is catching up because in the last few times in Japan, there's some things that are still pretty old school. Like I think certain ways of how they are, the world has caught up. If not, they transcended. But Jay's right. Given 40, 50 years ago, they were technology like advanced, right? I think in some ways, yeah, they are. They still are, but in a lot of departments, the world has like basically caught up or has sort of transcended because perhaps they realize, oh wow, guys like Google, like Apple.
You can cut it later.
Okay, I'm continuing on that. Sorry about that, I accidentally pushed off.
Yeah. Well, good.
Yeah, we're good. This is why we keep it raw, folks.
I mean, yeah. Hopefully the only thing
It's PG. Oh, sorry, it's G. Yeah, it's G. We won't go full Deadpool Wolverine here unless we have to.
That
Yeah.
was a great movie.
Yeah.
I was, yeah, I lost my shit when Blade came out. That was, spoiler alert, if you haven't watched it yet. Yeah, I don't know why him in particular, like, Gambit was cool, but when Blade came out, I'm
Yeah.
like, dang.
Everybody kind of went crazy.
Yeah, yeah. Like, I'm not sure if I saw any, like, articles on him being in it, so maybe that's why, like, I didn't know anything at all, and it was, like, a surprise.
It was just surprise after surprise. 'Cause I went in knowing nothing.
Right,
Me
right.
neither.
It was great.
But we watched it. We watched it like Thursday afternoon, like
Yeah.
literally even before the
I
Friday
think
release.
Oh yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
we went together.
We went to the pre.
Yeah, we went to like the sort of pre-release, but it's weird. Like nowadays, the movie's released on Friday, but they do it Thursday, so it's
Yeah.
very bizarre.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. There's nothing mentioned, no one. So we had that. We were afforded, not to be spoiled. But what Jay was saying is right. Like Blade showing up, and I don't know if it's because he showed up and you guys read, but it looks like the Blade movie is either canceled or now indefinitely in hell again. Because like Wesley Snipes said, there's only ever going to be one Blade. Spoiler alert.
Well, he was supposed to come back, right, as an older version of Blade.
I'm not sure.
We don't know.
I
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I think I've heard rumors
Yeah.
that he was, but then something broke down and now it's canceled.
Well, it's because he came back and then now everyone wants him. And
No, but I mean after that, so then they wanted him to be in that movie. So they like the new Blade movie.
Yeah.
Like passing the torch.
No, they wanted him to star in it.
Oh.
Yeah, yeah.
But then
Yeah.
that broke down.
Oh, did it?
So now, yeah.
Oh.
No, wait.
It's
The
fine.
Wesley Snipes, because I know the Mahershala Ali one.
Yeah, I
That
know.
one's scrapped.
Yeah.
Or that one's like tabled.
Okay,
now.
maybe I've misunderstood.
Yeah.
Maybe I've completely
Because Wesley Snipes came back, and
Yeah.
now what Jay was saying is that everybody wants him back now, right? Yeah. Yeah.
I was surprised. Like, I went to see it with some people, and one of our friends told us he fell asleep during the intro. I'm like, and
Wow.
the rest of us were like, "How can you fall asleep during that movie?" Like,
The movie starts at like 12. It doesn't
Yeah.
even bother going up to like 10.
Yeah.
It's so cranked up. You're like, they start like this? Right?
yeah. I'm like, "How did you fall asleep?" And he was like, "Oh, when they were talking in like the what's it called? The
Oh, the TVA.
TVA.
TVA, yeah.
I'm like, but there was no downtime. It was all like jokes and stuff. Like, how did you fall asleep? Yeah, all of us were just like flabbergasted.
It goes to show people need a little bit of depth in their life just to appreciate the finer things.
Yeah, maybe just it wasn't their cup of tea.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not for everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like I think objectively, you could say it is engaging because there's no like lull. It's just in your face at least.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know.
I mean, there were weak moments, but I thought, it made the most of what it could do, or of what it had.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I mean, for example, they killed, they wanted to bring Logan back, so they had to use, they didn't want to use, the whole, like, branching multiverse thing. Like, I don't think my understanding is that they didn't want to do that because they didn't feel it was a good storytelling thing, but they just did it. They gave up on trying to make a completely cohesive story. They just like told joke of it after joke, and I ate it up.
That's fan service, right?
Yeah.
It was answers. Like,
Yeah.
I get what like Mac was saying, because it was supposed to end on Logan.
Yeah.
That was the end of like Wolverine's
Yeah.
chapter because
Uh-huh.
it was Old Man Logan. That was one hell of a movie still. I think we actually went to watch it like decades ago, right?
Mhm.
And then how long was it? 15?
A decade ago.
Decade ago, yeah.
I think so. I honestly-
Yeah, something like that.
Dang.
And then and then of course with the buyout from the House of Mouse, and this Deadpool had to transition over, right? So in a way, Deadpool and Wolverine was very much like a 20th Century Fox. You've served us well, but now we're porting Fantastic Four, X-Men, Blade, Elektra, everybody onto this MCU bandwagon, right? And then and spoiler alert, in one of the deleted scenes or the post-credit scenes, Gambit lives. Right, Gambit lives. Yeah, he does. Go check it out. It's online.
Oh, you didn't see that?
Yeah.
Clip?
Yeah, it's on.
Oh, that's right. No, I was mixing Gambit with the Fantastic Four guy.
Oh.
So like got like
Uh,
who got
Chris Evans?
yeah,
yeah,
that's right.
he got his maniacal nuts stripped.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was such a. I spent so much time trying to put my head around what was happening.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it was mind blowing, but yeah, I didn't know about his, that he played Fantastic Four. I never saw those movies.
Oh,
so
okay.
yeah, I have to go. There's so much I have to go back.
Yeah, there's a lot of back stuff. You have to. I feel bad for people that get into the MCU like now, and they have to start all the way from Iron Man 1, and there's like
And now you have to go for
25 shows and movies you have to watch.
Yeah, and then yeah, like Max said, now you have to watch all the Fox stuff. That's another 100 hours.
Yeah, like I haven't watched Venom yet, but apparently it is some type of tie-in of some type.
Oh.
Really?
I didn't look into it because I didn't want to spoil, but there's the Morbius
Okay.
and Madame Web and all those.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're gonna make since Venom is technically a part of the MCU, if they're gonna add all those characters in. Yeah.
Craven's coming up soon too.
Yeah. There's, I think at some point, I don't know what they're gonna do. That it's gonna be too much, and people will start to lose interest because they're gonna run out of characters, right? And you already saw it in was it Phase 4? Is this Phase 4? Phase 5?
This is 4, I think.
Yeah, a lot of people I know just stopped watching after Endgame because a lot of the characters now, a lot of the main ones, died or are not there anymore, and there's just these new characters that no one has any emotional ties to. So it's the viewership stuff are gonna go down.
What has? That's why Bob Iger went back to the drawing board and said, okay guys, we're putting out way too much crappy content. Let's stick to quality, 3 movies a year, and maybe some TV shows, but yeah, because you're just pumping out one thing after another, and you're building too fast, too quickly, too furious, right? And
Poor guys.
Right.
They've been bombing so much in
Yeah.
the last couple of
You
years.
can't feel bad for them. They're making billions of dollars off of
Are they now?
of merchandise and ticket sales and all that stuff.
Okay.
At least for me, I find it hard to feel sorry for them. You've done it yourself.
Yeah, but yeah, that's true.
yeah,
They're getting raked by so many I don't know, a lot of fans are just
Yeah.
they're just I don't know.
because your quality is gone. There's no storytelling. You're just trying to give the fans. It's weird because they're giving the fans what they want, which is actually not the right move to make. Because it's going back to the human nature where I think honestly we're just weird people that you just can't please all the time. You can't hit all the right notes because you're gonna want more, or it's well, that's not actually what I want. But they gave you what you want, and they will still deny it, right?
Is that Disney's problem? Are they trying to people please too hard?
Oh yeah, they are.
Oh,
100%.
100%. Yeah, because how do they sustain Disney Plus if no one's subscribing, right? And if no one is supporting the movies, well, what are they gonna do, right? Yeah, they absolutely people please. And so going back to Deadpool and Wolverine, I think in a lot of ways that was kind of a fan service movie. When I was watching through it, I'm yeah, it's a pretty much fan service movie, but done in a way that was still tastelessly tasteful. And I would say tastelessly because it was just very, very Ryan Reynolds, and in a good way. It's very you needed that kind of spark to bring the whole thing back up because
I mean there were so many moments where I was he knows just as well as everybody knows that what's happening makes no sense, but he has such a good sense of what it doesn't matter that it doesn't make sense because people will connect with it. And people will forgive a lot of things because he knows how all these things kind of come together, even if it sort of is messing with this the sort of the long-term narrative, because in a sense it doesn't really because he just understands that chemistry so well. Yeah,
I think that's the thing that Disney is failing at is with Marvel, with Star Wars. I'm not sure if there's any other projects that they're messing up on, but they're trying to please or try to find new audience, so they're trying to change these projects that are a certain way to fit into who they're trying to please now. Whereas Deadpool and Wolverine, well, it's still fan service like the other one, like Acolyte or whatever, The Last Jedi or whatever, which is also fan service. Deadpool and Wolverine is fan servicing to the fans that of those characters from before. So I think they were successful because they are fan servicing the actual fans, whereas other projects are trying to fan service fans that don't even have yet. Yeah. So that's my take on that.
When you try too hard, I think it happens when you try too hard to win people that you haven't, like you're trying to convince rather than trying to sort of introduce, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's too hard. Like say with Acolyte, you try way too hard to like bring in new people in when you didn't have to, right? I mean, dude, your fan base of Star Wars is already big enough. Why don't you tap into that saturation and then just go from there? Do what you do best. This is how George Lucas built this whole thing, because they all loved Star Wars for being Star Wars, not all these other things that come to it, right? Not trying to get with the times, not trying to be, appease to a certain demographic, but just trying to stay true to the material, right? Honoring the material by bringing the stuff from the material. Right?
Yeah, it's like you've got to push what you know is successful, not try to become successful by doing what you think is going to make you successful. Like, there's a reason why these projects are, the way they are. They have so many fans, millions and millions of fans. There's a reason. There's a reason why they're like that, right? And if you are changing those projects, of course, your fan base is going to disappear, because those were the fans that got you to that point. So I don't know how they kind of don't see that. And then, to turn around and be like, oh, like, all of you are racist and sexist because you don't like this. It's like, that's not the best way to treat the fans of your franchises, right? It's like you're alienating the people that got you to this point by accusing them of things that aren't even true most of the time.
This also brings over, I think, a society of being too hypersensitive, right? Yes, what I'm saying this is basically where you have a right, to feel, either attacked or feel like you have been wronged or assaulted verbally, whatever it is, or on the receiving end, like you shouldn't be that way. You shouldn't feel a sense of disrespect. But flipping on the other side of the coin, can't we take something generally speaking and just not have to make it personal? Why does everything have to be personal, right? Because clearly, say a project comes out like Star Wars, right? Like Acolyte. Imagine if they didn't go woke and they just stick to material. I think it would have been really good. If they didn't try to introduce so many different elements that break canon. I think arguably you would have had a much better result, right? But because now you're trying to appease the voices that make a smaller demographic, or those that are trying to sell a different agenda, then there's a problem, because now you're diversifying somewhere, right? And I think that ultimately hurts an image. It hurts a brand. It hurts a franchise, right? Yeah, it's hard, man. Like you can't please everybody. You just can't. You gotta stick to what you know and go with it. You're gonna have people, unfortunately, who will be hurt, and not to say that you're being malicious, but sometimes you gotta be okay with it. And that sounds very kind of like ironic, or like counter. What do you call that? Not intuitive, but like kind of hypocritical. It sounds like hypocritical, but like you just you can't please everybody.
Yeah, like I'm sure there's tons of movies that I don't like I'm not gonna try and change them, because some people might like that, and I just don't have to watch it. Like,
And they don't have to attack you for
yeah, like, let's say, what was that movie with is it Great Wall?
With Matt Damon?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you have a Westerner in the middle of China in that time of
Yeah.
the whatever dynasty area. Oh yeah.
Yeah, and then you have this, white savior complex, right? And, I don't agree with that, I don't like it, but I'm not going to try and tell everyone not to watch it and, like, this is terrible. It exists, I don't like it, I just move on, right? You don't have to try and change everyone to see things how you see it. That is just not a good way to do things. And I think Star Wars Theory said it well. If you're concerned about Star Wars being non-inclusive or lacking diversity, that is not true at all, because there's aliens, all types of aliens. There is, Mace Windu's black. You have strong female characters like Leia, Ahsoka, all these characters. There is diversity. It's just, you're trying to push it and shove it down your throat.
Well, you suddenly give it an agenda somehow,
Yeah.
right? And it's like very true when you don't mean it that way, but society then shifts it, it morphs it when this doesn't have to be, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even like not to bring this property, but I think Star Trek is also very rich. They also sell different. I think Mac and I have this conversation in the past, and Star Trek is very philosophical. I think there's got some things where I start to actually appreciate. I actually went back and watched Star Trek Beyond again on Netflix, and I quite enjoyed it. I'm like, there's parts of it I don't even remember. Then I thought, I'm like, wow, it's actually a really good movie. I quite enjoyed Beyond because there were some things and aspects they touched on that I thought, wow, this is actually quite interesting, right? But of course, deep down, I'm still very much a Star Wars boy, but I can appreciate good sci-fi. And yeah, Star Trek, there's all this like creatures and aliens, and they arguably have done things that if you think nowadays, they were ahead of their times, or like they were quote unquote woke, but they weren't intentional, but they were just trying to create good characters, female led too, or even female strong, kind of backwards. Like was it Uhura? Like dude, she's on one of the main casts of all the people in the bridge, right? And that's been going on for decades, right? Is anyone gonna say anything about it? I mean, maybe, but
back in the 60s they did, but by the 80s that became the norm.
yeah, right, yeah. So sometimes you wonder, why can't we look at things that do exist than trying to find a bone to pick?
Yeah, like I think one of the earliest examples for me, like Power Rangers,
Oh.
like they had a diverse cast of Power Rangers. Obviously, there's a predominantly white lead because we are in a Western country, but there is diverse casts, like female characters, people of color.
Asians, they're the first few ones to put Asians like there.
Yeah.
With Johnny on Bosch and even the girl who played Trinity. I can't remember her name. Sorry.
The one that passed away, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He passed away. I think it was in a car accident. It was sad. Like she was pretty cool, right? And she was one of the first few people. I think she's Vietnamese, right? To have such a major, presence in arguably because they try to make Power Rangers big in the Western culture, and it did. And she was part of the OG cast, right? Like what Jay was saying too. Like even with having a black person on there too, right? Working together with whites and whatever, right?
Yeah. So that was one of the first examples that I can remember of seeing diversity, and that was in the 90s where it wasn't so common. So even Brock, Pokemon, Brock and Misty, minorities. I think a lot of like kid shows had quite diverse casts. Yeah. Man, I haven't watched a lot of those shows in a long time. Do you guys ever like find yourself maybe it's just me, like on YouTube, just like looking up random clips of old stuff, like listening to the Power Rangers song, watching like a certain clip from Pokemon or something like that. I don't know if it's just me.
Yeah, I find something very interesting, and it's so true. The Power Rangers theme song didn't have to hit that hard.
Yeah.
Do you think about it? But when you listen to it now, like, man, this is a pretty badass tune.
Yeah.
And it's a kid's show, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, wow, nice. That's a hard gym, like, iron pumping music, right? Yeah.
Yeah, like when that comes on, shit's about to hit the fan. Like the Megazord's coming out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, part of me, like, I mean, going back to what we were talking about earlier, a little bit, like, yeah, part of me, like, is I'm never really sure if I want to talk about, like, I guess, like, what, like, I guess, like, quote unquote woke ideas, I guess. I mean, like, talk about it sort of in a podcast form, and not necessarily because I don't want to explore it. Like, I don't have any problem with that. It's just that I feel like it's divisive because I mean, so like everybody has strong feelings about it. Like people, like people sort of in the conservative world have an idea of what it means, and varying ideas, I think, and then people on the left don't seem to really understand what it means at all. Like, they sort of, they kind of make fun of it, and then they basically sort of get to the point and say, like, and ask you, what are you trying to say? What is woke, right? And it's understandable why both sides, are come to the place, arrive at the place where they are, like, because they're based on different things, right? Like, and I guess this is one of those other people pleasing things, like, and for both sides it's so different, right? In a way, Star Wars was like, I mean, like the new recent shows have sort of been very, like, clearly trying to please that side, and in their eyes they see that side as universal, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then and I don't know, like, I mean, I can't say whether that's right or wrong. I mean, I think traditional Star Wars never really had that kind of, it didn't, it wasn't really one way or another. It wasn't really trying to, it was trying to reach out to something more universal, and not trying to, like, it didn't, in a way, it didn't really have any official positions on anything.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what made it accessible to a lot of people, yeah, like, like, so I mean, I've been spending this whole time thinking about how, what can be said about this whole conversation, right? Like, or what I mean, like,
I mean, I think at the end of the day, if I can jump in.
Oh yeah.
It doesn't matter who the cast is, what their orientation is, as long as there's a good story, like, I think that's all that matters, right?
I think that's what everybody's saying.
But if they're,
in a sense.
Yeah, but their focus is on something different. Like, if you could have the same cast in, let's say, The Acolyte, if it was written well, I'm pretty sure a lot of people would have liked it. But it wasn't written well. But because they were focusing so hard on, pushing a certain agenda. So.
Well, I guess, what, like, yeah. I mean, I agree. Like, they could have said, they could have done just, a few things in the way they were communicating the story, and it could have been so much better. Like, I think it would have been accessible to a lot more people. but I feel like think just going back to what different people think about what woke is, like, the people, like those people who are in that sort of left, sphere, and they're watching the story and they think the storytelling is good, right? They think it is a good story, and they don't really see any legitimate criticisms of that. And is that even, can we even say anything about whether that's right or wrong?
I think if they're just getting into Star Wars, let's say, then yeah, they might just say, oh, this is a good story, because they don't know any of the back story. But for fans for the rest of the people that have been fans for 10, 20, 30 years, which is probably the majority of the fan base that is watching it, they have an issue with it because they know, like, everything else, right? So I agree, like, for people that don't know anything and they're just dropping in just like, oh man, let's just give this a watch, let's just toss it on Disney Plus. They might think it's good because they don't know any better, right? But that is a very small percentage of the population, I think.
Like, maybe if I can flip the script here a little bit and play like devil's advocate, because just hearing what like Mac was saying about just the idea about access, because at the time, if they made the same kind of content now, maybe 30, 40 years ago, I think instead of being woke, it would be like you make such a negative drawback because suddenly you're dealing with, or on the other side, if this came out roughly, I don't know, like right when like the first 9 movies came out in between, like say changing colors of lightsaber, and they made that sort of within that, I think it might be more digestible. There was, oh wow, okay, the Force powers can be used this way rather than changing something that's fully cemented, right? Or the idea about having like maybe 2 moms, right? At the time, you think, okay, it's very controversial because obviously same sexuality relationships is frowned upon. And now it's like it's like, I don't want to sound belligerent or ignorant, but like if you're trying to come out, no time is greater than now because it's like a norm, right? And it's like and it's we've created a society where it's more comfortable, more acceptable, right? So what I'm saying is that like perhaps this new content now, like, and I honestly didn't think about it until hearing you guys talk about this now. It's about giving access and perhaps now enriching the universe sort of on a wider spectrum. Perhaps in 20, 30 years when Star Wars is still evolving, that this now becomes like a norm and the people can go, oh wow, they've tried to do this and make it all more accessible, right? Because, it is true, there isn't this type of thing because it just wasn't a lot of it, right? Or perhaps there's so much stuff that was already cemented that was canon, and then, for the purists who just can't accept it, I can understand that, okay, they've changed things, like changing a lightsaber, because then you're breaking things that don't make sense, because are you saying that now, Anakin went there and slayed all the younglings to his happiness because his lightsaber was still blue? What the heck, right? I'm sorry, like, Lucasfilm, if you're watching this,
Yeah.
I'm not trying to, get myself with no job, but, I think there's some things that just, kind of become, contradicting, right?
Well,
Yeah.
they might retcon that at some point.
Yeah, exactly. So then, like, because it's like,
I mean, like, they might go back and edit it so that it turns red.
Retcon.
maybe, retcon, go back and like start changing some things like they did with some Marvel movies, because they've done that too, right?
Yeah, like like the Ki-Adi-Mundi in episode 1, like saying Sith have been extinct for millennia, and then him showing up only 70 years before he says that.
Yeah.
That makes no sense at all, right?
So they're gonna cut that line out.
Yeah, like I think we
But
just
then,
want
I mean,
continuity, right?
Scene doesn't work as well. He doesn't say that line.
Exactly.
He
So
that line so either.
it's just that is, if anything, in any show you want continuity. Like that is, if anything, one of the most important things you want. And how can you expect anyone to take your show seriously if there's no continuity, right? Yeah.
So it's probably what people are bumping on. The continuity doesn't make sense, the logic doesn't make sense, because you suddenly go, whoa, like everything you say believe in Star Wars suddenly just goes out the door because things have shifted, right? And like you're now granted these new powers or these new things that happen, right? I think what Mac was saying is that if they took the story, say Acolyte example, and it did a few things, they didn't try to address the many things instead of do a few things.
You mean the power of
Yeah, the power of many. Yeah, the power of many. If you do less of the power of many, you actually end up doing much more, right? Yeah.
I mean, like, I think at the end of the day, like, you know, like, I mean, there were a lot of weird, like, a lot of, like, you know, a lot of sort of moments in that show that were, like, just kind of caught a lot of people, you know, it just came out of left field for a lot of people, and, but, I mean, I don't think that's even a problem. I mean, at the end of the day, people, like, you know, they want it to be convincing, right? Like, they want the story to be convincing, and that, you know, that, okay, sure, so maybe Kiarimandi knew for some reason, and he didn't, and he lied about it in the future, I guess, right? If it's convincing, you know, it can be forgiven, right? Like, you know, people will say, wow, that really does add a layer. Or if somehow Yoda knew, which apparently he did according to the acolyte, like, if there was something compelling about that, like, but the problem is that, you know, they've told the story and it just gives the impression that they're not only incompetent, they're evil, right?
Yeah.
And completely evil, right? There's no rationale for what they did, right? And, you know, you're expecting us to just accept it or just take it. I mean, that's really hard for a lot of people to accept. Like, we want to be convinced, right? You know, you're a storyteller, you're supposed to enchant us, right? Like, and for some people apparently it did work, but for a lot of people they were just like, it really, like, really did not
Makes sense.
yeah, like, yeah, like, they were not, I mean, they're so invested in what's already there,
Mhm.
and they wanted to also sort of come together and be convincing in the same way that the originals were, right? Like, it was incredibly immersive, right? Like, every single thing that happens in the movie, every single moment, and you know, every scene you look at just takes you somewhere, and you know, like, or you know, it's like somebody you know, right? Like Ben Kenobi, or you know, or Yoda, or a princess, you know, in space, right? Like, you are taken so far, like, into this incredible universe, and somehow when a story's just not told well, or you know, it's not convincing, like, you kill some of that magic, right? Like, it becomes a little less, you know, like, it, you know, it's not surprising that some people are just almost religious about how firm, or you know, how concrete they need the story to be, and when you threaten that, like, you know, it's like you know, kind of challenging their god, right? Like, their
Right.
yeah.
I think, like, in the prequels, they did a good job of, in my opinion, kind of, I guess, not painting the Jedi evil, but like, when you're seeing it through Anakin's eyes, he has that internal struggle, right? Like, you know, the Jedi aren't letting me become fully what I want to be, and it was written in a way where the Jedi are still, like, technically the good guys, but you can see through Anakin's eyes how he feels about the Jedi, and you can understand where there's some things that are like, oh, the Jedi might not be all this great thing, because they have their flaws, right? Just like us as humans, we have our flaws. And yeah, so I think if you write it in a way like that, it works.
Yeah.
It keeps you invested, right? Whereas, like, this new stuff is like, oh, Jedi are bad because they hide things, like, they're manipulative. It's just so, like, in your face. There's no tact in their writing. There's no storytelling.
Or like, what about it, right? Because like you said, you're not selling motive, and you're not trying to. You're just simply, like, you know, painting a brushstroke, and that's it. That's how it is. But how did it get there? What explains this brushstroke? What explains why? How did it get there? Right? Why? What it is?
Yeah, I mean, like, it's basically like the word Jedi just has like an X on it, and that's like, you know, somehow that, like, that's they want us to just take it, right?
Yeah.
You know, like that's the story.
Like if you fast forward and maybe hopefully this will be perhaps it needs an exposition, because like thinking back how Revenge of the Sith actually got a lot of slack because there was just so much stuff that wasn't, I guess, fully fleshed out per se. But of course, when you get older, you do appreciate the charm. But it's until you get the injection of like Clone Wars, and especially the last season of Clone Wars. Suddenly, like the prequels and especially Revenge of the Sith just got redeemed out of the blue because you know it gave like it essentially also gave more threat to 66, right? And then of course now you got Ahsoka and Obi-Wan, all these other shows who really take that horrific moment and just like double it, triple it, right? And he goes, wow, this is actually really scary because it was an annihilation of the Jedi and only literally a few survived, right? But it does take time to sort of mature some of these things, right? So like I'm trying to be open-minded, trying to understand that okay, Acolyte didn't start off and in great terms. Perhaps they needed a second season to sort of redeem it. It's kind of similar to Lord of the Rings: Rings of Power, or the first season. Oh my goodness, it was like a chore. They were talking about like you didn't want to like, go through it. I was like thinking, I was like, man, how much more pain does I subject myself into? And it was a payoff, right?
There was.
Yeah, in the end,
There
you see that. Did you watch season 1?
I didn't because
Okay.
I don't like I don't know I have a picture of how it is in my head and
Yeah.
I don't know like I kind of I'm a little disappointed in myself that like you know because I was already hearing people were just like were feeling that it was not very strong like it wasn't all negative but most people were just like it's okay right
It's not
and I
Tolkien.
didn't want-
Yeah.
yeah it's not Tolkien
If you go in with like a Tolkien purist, then
Yeah.
you're gonna shoot yourself in the foot and thinking, okay, I'm gonna bother this. But season 2, there's a lot of stuff that actually makes it quite enjoyable.
Interesting
It's
really.
not very Tolkien,
okay
but even someone who's like kind of on the outside and thinking, okay, this is actually pretty good, and it actually helped enrich some of the stuff that was happening in, say, the Fellowship of the Ring. So it was almost like a lot of times, and I do understand that, you know, certain depending on the medium, and I'm glad that there are streaming services because, you know, say example with Obi-Wan, instead of getting like a 2-hour movie, you essentially got like a 6-hour content because they're going to episodes. They have that time to do expositional, you know, material, right? So yeah, what I was saying with Rings of Power, the season 2, you do get payoff. You do find enjoyment. And then I remember the last 3 episodes of Ring of Power, I'm like, this is I'm glad that I let myself just wait and then just tear through the whole thing because that made it more enjoyable. It was quite like I think at the end, despite obviously some of its flaws, but Rings of Power was quite enjoyable because, you know, spoiler alert, you do see how Sauron became a thing, right? And how, because at times, I think even in the books, early on, they say, oh, you know, how does Sauron go to sculpt and shape and make these rings? What the heck, right? Imagine some dude who's wearing this sheet of metal on his face who looks like a threat, and suddenly he's hanging over the elves and the dwarves, you know, making these rings. I find that quite ridiculous, right? But then when, I think in the books, you know, Sauron is also called Anatar, and he's clothed himself in this, like, majestic as an elf, then we're like, oh wow, you know, he sells himself. It's very devious. I think in some ways I had a lot of biblical themes kind of come in my head too, because it's also, you know, showing me what real deception looks like. It's when you're, you know, suddenly you are a wolf in sheep's clothing and you're dining with them, but you're also twisting their minds and changing, like deception, right? And when that comes to it, then you go, wow, that's actually how the rings were conceived. And you realize, oh man, it's a much richer, fuller, you know, visualization of it. Right? So, going back to that, I thought the Rings of Power needed the second season. And I think it needs a third season to then take that to the next level, right? So, you know, I think it like you guys said it best, it does need to tell proper storytelling and not just, you know, just brush through this thing and then move on. I think that's what probably people have found a hard time stomaching. When they introduce these things, but they don't take time to dissect it or to make it, and try to, I wouldn't say necessarily convince, but try to educate and where that, you know, part of storytelling goes towards.
Yeah, it feels like if you can look at this as on like an island or something, or like a world map, these new shows sometimes they're like an island, right? Like a remote island, not explored. Whereas like, you know, North America is like the originals, and if you can't connect the island to the main land, then you're gonna just be like, oh, this is so different, right? I think also, at least for Star Wars, music is or any show, music is very important.
Yes.
And there was not, aside from the Mandalorian, I know you like Boba Fett, the music, there's no John Williams, right? Like, the music has not been there, it's not engaging, like, there's no Binary Sunset, or like, Duel of Fates tier music.
Okay, Duel of Fates is next tier, dude.
Yeah.
There's nothing that touches that.
Yeah,
okay, just to be
man.
very clear here, okay?
Yeah. But like, there's nothing close to that. Like, sound is very important in shows.
Yeah.
Like, whether it be sound effects, music, they're all important, and I think they're just failing at that as well.
You're right. There's
And
nothing.
whenever Duel of Fates comes on, like there's just so much stuff that comes in my head.
Yeah, it just gives you like a certain feeling.
Yeah.
It's so funny because you guys bring up the fact that the music will trigger the image. It's very rarely not like, you know, not like to say that it doesn't happen, but like the image triggering of music is less than the music triggering like an image, right? Because if you think about like,
I mean,
yeah.
they build up so much to
Yeah.
that, right? Like at that point, this, you know, there's so much anger sort of in Anakin, and there's so much like so many stakes are there, and you know they literally are sort of fighting. It's you know good and evil fighting, right? At that point, it's like years later, you know, you still think about what's going on all there. Like you're still exploring those emotions and those like all of that sort of coming together. Like it's you know incredible to me after all these years.
Funny that you should mention the picture triggering the music triggering the image, because we were just talking about Backstreet Boys, right?
Yeah.
That
was such a great opening.
Yeah, like certain songs now, like, you know, I think there's a moment when I had karaoke with some friends, and then I won't go into full many details, but now it's like I have a new memory with the song now because we've created a moment, right? And so it's things like that, right?
for sure.
Yeah, I mean, well, on that note, I think it's kind of interesting how all of our topics did come back. It's kind of nice to, you know, kind of delve into pop culture as well, because
Geek out a little bit.
yeah, because we're all still nerds at heart. I kept looking at both of you guys wearing your shirts. I'm like, I didn't get the memo because one's got the Linkin Park and one's got the Guns N' Roses. So yeah, thanks.
I've been looking for a Guns N' Roses shirt.
Oh, I got this like years ago, like in high school.
Oh, wow.
When Hot Topic was like a not so pop culture-y. It was like an actual metal store.
So you've had that shirt since high school?
Yeah.
Wow, dude. Okay, I say no more
Yeah.
before I get canceled.
Why?
Yeah, I used to wear baggy t-shirts. Like, I was like a short Asian with baggy clothes. So that's why it still fits.
Yeah, now it's very fitted. Okay.
Yeah, it fits now.
Yeah, makes sense. And on that note, yeah, thanks again, guys, for tuning in. I always appreciate you guys just for your support. And of course, smash that like button and subscribe to us so that we continue to, you know, hopefully put in some content or just, you know, speak into your lives a little bit, as it's definitely been enriching for us to do this, to sit down and have these conversations with each other. Of course, leave comments, leave descriptions. Reach out to us. We'll spend the time to read through those and you know, provide feedback. And again, if there's content that you ever want us to, you know, or topics you want us to speak about or just address, by all means, you know, use this as a sort of a vessel for the conversation.
Yeah, like I know you're not going to agree with everything we say, but yeah, if you feel that you want to bring something up, maybe enrich us in our ways of thinking, feel free to do that as well. We're all open to, you know, seeing other perspectives. Just because we talk about something in a certain perspective doesn't mean that other people don't have different perspectives. So, love to hear what other people and how you guys are thinking about certain subjects that we talk about. So you can also leave that in the comments. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, yeah, we share a lot of our ideas, and yeah, I think all of us here are very open about things, and it's kind of like we were saying earlier. Like everybody likes to be convinced about things, and we're very open to different ideas, and being convinced to think in different ways, and so yeah, like that's one of the great things about having an open dialogue, and just and being willing to explore things in good faith, which is what we do here. So yeah, hopefully we can hear from people, and I'm sorry it kind of we kind of ended up going, kind of touching on all sorts of different topics, not really going on one central thing, but I don't know, I think that's half the fun of the way, our sort of, the way we talk about things and explore, and yeah, hopefully, we can go into other crazy and interesting things, so. Yeah, hope we'll see you guys again some other times, maybe in 2 weeks or so. And yeah.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in.
Thanks.
Bye.